It is my pleasure to introduce our closing keynote featuring Michelle Miller and our moderator, Sabina Ghebremedhin. Michelle Miller is a co-host of the award-winning show CBS Saturday Morning. She's a dedicated journalist who joined CBS in 2004 and has done groundbreaking reporting on social justice issues and interviewed global leaders, artists, and celebrities. She has earned numerous awards, including an Emmy and an Edward R. Murrow Award. Plus, she's also a best-selling author of an incredible memoir, Belonging, A Daughter's Search for Identity Through Loss and Love, which came out last March. And please do yourselves a favor, and after you leave the summit, make sure that you guys read it. Now, our amazing moderator and dear friend of the center, Sabina Ghebremedhin, is coordinating producer and head of race and culture unit at ABC News. Sabina is also an Emmy-winning journalist, which leads ABC News' multi-platform reporting efforts and garnering recognitions for her impactful work on projects like Say Her Name, Breonna Taylor, and Their Painful Bond. Let's extend a warm welcome as we invite them to the stage.
Woohoo!
A little bit louder, yes, there we go.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Oh, you don't sound it. I just got off of a flight, 5-6 hours, and yeah, here I am.
All for you guys, right?
Just for you. That's right. You matter, folks.
Well,
Hi.
hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
I am up and at 'em.
I know, and it's so great that you're here, you guys. She's the best person to interview. I interviewed her before. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Let's start with your career journey.
Oh,
I know they all want to hear about it. How did you get to where you are today? What was that moment?
Oh my goodness. This is like so funny because how I got to CBS News is really about intention. In my mind, first I remembered I always wanted to work in New York City. But really, it was an accident of my husband getting a job here. I was not called like you probably were. Sabina, come to ABC News. We love your work. No, I came into CBS News through the back door. And I'll tell you about the back door. It's kind of cool, being that, you know, sometimes the fanfare of coming into a place, and that's happened to me too, is that people have a huge expectation. So coming into a space like network news, where folks weren't really, I came in because I had literally a relationship with 3 entities at the network. The first was I had a relationship with the folks over at BET. CBS NewsPath produced the BET Nightly News, which was a subset at that time. And everyone knows what CBS NewsPath is. It's kind of a feeder at all the other stations throughout the country. They would utilize network correspondents for their local television stations. The second was Byron Pitts, who's now one of your great colleagues. He was a great mentor of mine through the National Association of Black Journalists, and he introduced me to the vice president of news, a woman by the name of Marcy McGinnis, legend in the field. And the third was someone who I had actually met 10 years prior. And I'm going to tell you that story because I always tell young folks, you know, a lot of you raise your hands, tell me whether you think I just had the most fabulous career and I was successful all the way through. Oh, that's sweet of you. No, I had pitfalls, and I think it's really important to share pitfalls. I worked out of college. I went to the Los Angeles Times for about, you know, it was a sporadic 6 months separated by backpacking through Europe and North Africa. And then I landed at this place called the Orange County News Channel, which was a 24-hour news startup, kind of like Long Island 12, kind of like There's a New England News Channel. I mean, and there used to be one in Washington, D.C. I know a few of you are from Washington. Am I right about that? But it was, yeah, all right. And so this was an opportunity. 2.5 years I was there. And then I got a position at a station. I had a choice. I could have gone to San Antonio, which is a market size 40, or I could go to Columbia, South Carolina, which was a market size 70 or 80. But the better station was Columbia, so that's where I went. I was there for 1.5 years. I only had a 1.5 year contract. The 1.5 year contract was it was an NBC station, and I had met, and I know I go off on tangents, but it's really important for you to understand this. All these connects. I had met the VP of News for NBC, who took a liking to me, who he was like, you just need the work. You need some honing. I'm going to put you down in Columbia, and you got a 1.5 year contract, which usually contracts are like 2 years, 3 years, and then we're going to bring you up to our farm. Well, around 6 months into my contract, that VP was part of the folks who got fired after the big scandal at Dateline NBC with the truck that blew up and the staging. I'm sure you guys are reading about this in school, or you read about it. It's like one of those premier things that happen in network news. But so that connect was gone, and I was miserable in Columbia. I had an awful, just like a couple of hits where I lost my confidence. I felt I had nowhere to turn, and that's like a really bad place to be in. You've got to have people around you who believe in you, and I just didn't. Not necessarily at the station. So I started making mistakes. And one of the mistakes I made was choosing a story. Actually, I was assigned the story, but not saying, hey, this is not a story to do on the weekends. That's number one. I should have spoken up for myself. The story was about a little girl who the mother alleged was being molested by a neighbor. The weekend is not a time to do the story. And sometimes you have people in your career who are telling you, you must do this. And your gut's saying, this is not the story to do. Let's wave off. There were, I had no officials who could respond to something like that. And long story short, the photographer I was utilizing in the edit, in the headline, revealed the identity of this child. And it was only because he left a second of video in the shot that the headline ran long. But he didn't edit that out. And in so doing, both me, the show producer, and him were all fired as a result of a lawsuit. Luckily, I was looking for a job. I had been in New Orleans the day before I was fired. I was in New Orleans looking for a job. And I talk to young folks all the time about integrity and making sure that you are up and up in everything you do, or as much as you can, being transparent about your experiences. And I was interviewing with this man by the name of Joe Duke. And Joe was just this great old school news guy. And I really felt I could trust him on meeting him like this. And I just felt this need to tell him what I had gone through. And without laying it all out there, because I was under I was told not to talk about it, I kind of explained to him by asking the question, have you ever really made a huge mistake? And he said, yes, of course I have. And I said, what was it? And he told me, and he said, have you? And I basically laid out the mistake I made. I didn't own the story completely. And then I also chose to shoot it in a 60-minute style that I had seen, where the tight close-up of the mom was of her mouth, and she had a very distinguishable mole. And so coupled with the child being revealed in the shot, it was clear who this child was even further. So that's why I was part of that. But I say that because 10 years later, well, actually, he hired me 4 months later, he left the station and went to Houston. I stayed in touch. And then 10 years later, he is the head of NewsPath, CBS. And he was instrumental not only in helping me through with the other 2 people to get into CBS News in this temporary reporter's way that led me into a permanent job, but he was a great sponsor for me. And it was solely based. Yes, he thought I had talent in storytelling. Yes, he thought I was an okay anchor. But more importantly, he said, you have integrity. And integrity matters in this job. And you won't ever make the mistakes that you made as a result of those mistakes that you made. It's like, it's tantamount to like the future of your career. And so I know that was a very long story, but I thought it was important to kind of lay it out there.
And Michelle have given you a lot of information just with that.
Did you follow all of that?
One,
good.
She got a job in a local market first. She's at the network now. So that's information that she just gave you. When you were in that situation, just in that moment, what were some of those challenges and how did you deal with it in that moment? Because you said that you did not have support around you and you were sort of alone on your journey at that moment.
Right.
How did you manage and how did you sort of had to present yourself, sort of to protect yourself as well, because it's your career?
When I say support, so what I did have was a community outside the station. And when you move into these communities, that is key. And one form of community was that my dad had a friend in med school who lived there, and they were pillars of the community. So I had that. The second thing I did was I connected with a nonprofit there, like when I was interviewing. I was like, I want to talk to a nonprofit working in the community here. And the nonprofit at the time was the Columbia Urban League and a man by the name of J.T. McLaughlin. I say these names so you understand I still have these connects. The irony is J.T. later helped my husband get that job in New York, because my husband is the president of the National Urban League. And so it was like, it's funny how things like that happen, like these connects, these network, it's unbelievable, and that's kind of how they flowed in my life. So I had community outside the station that I did not go completely bonkers, right? My boss at the time was this hard-driven, hard-nosed guy, and he was that way with everyone, an equal opportunity, hard kind of driving person who I had respect for, but was just, I couldn't cut it. And I think that you gotta lean in on someone or something, and that was that outside community. And I find that a lot of people in these early markets don't have that, don't find that. They have their friends. One of the photographers when I moved to New Orleans, he moved to New Orleans, got married, and the 3 of us lived in an apartment together. So I had Chuck and Jana who had moved to, it's funny, I have a lot of connects. But so like community is really key. With respect to the journalism, I think that was when I was digging into the National Association or the associations that I was, really tied to, calling friends on the phone who were in other markets, explaining what had happened, some of the mistakes I was making. I wasn't in it alone, even though I was in that moment. I felt alone. You feel alone sometimes, and there are people all around you. But I will say this, in 2019, I was at a conference, and I was walking down the hall, and I heard, Michelle, Michelle. And it was the man who was the news director, Randy Covington, he came up to me. And like, I actually, because I never, ever, even people who have done me wrong, I never burn a bridge. I always thank them for whatever barrier they put in place of me, whatever. I've always find a way to turn around whatever it was that they threw at me as, okay, if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't have known this, right? And he was one of those people, because I really respected him as a newsman. He runs up to me in the hallway and says, Michelle, I don't know if you remember me. I was like, of course I remember you. And he says, I just want to say, I know this may come out as paternalistic. I don't mean it to, but I'm just so incredibly proud of you. I watch you. This is the man who told me he thought I needed to change careers, that I needed to find a different way to earn my living. And I was like, oh my goodness. That really, it meant something to me. Obviously, I didn't listen to him. Obviously, I moved beyond it. But don't listen to the detractors, because sometimes don't internalize it, is what I'm saying. Utilize it to drive harder, to move further. And I can only say, I mentioned this earlier, one of my favorite sayings is a saying that actually came to me from someone in sales at WIS-TV at that station in Columbia. And right after I was fired, I went to have a conversation with him to say goodbye. And he said, you know what, Michelle, do not internalize this. A setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. So I would encourage you, like, just dig deep in those moments of despair and rely on community, because sometimes your community outside of where you're working is what gives you the strength to keep moving forward in that career and in that job.
Absolutely, and she's giving you so much information here too. One, the business is very small.
Oh, yes.
So any relationship, keep them no matter what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then also to keep trying no matter what, and any feedback is good feedback.
Yeah, feedback
even if it's negative.
Let me tell you, you don't know what you don't know. And oftentimes in this field, as in any other, people are in rooms having conversations about you. And it's so important when you're not in the room to have somebody who is sponsoring you, who is there speaking up for you. You will never know it. That's happened, to my knowledge, I know for a fact, 3 times. Very recently, I won't go into it, my press person's here, but someone who literally said something about me that and it wasn't good. And another boss said, what are you talking about? She is hardworking. She is someone who is always there. She fights for her stories. She tells stories that are out of the box. You know, why are you caught up on this one thing? And another individual in the room came to me and told me the story. And it just sort of overwhelmed me through that moment of saying, you know, you gotta have these people fighting the fight. And then times where people have told me things that were clearly said about me that were misinformation, or just not misinformation, but people were given wrong information. And sometimes when people are there to like put you down to your face, they're actually giving you the power to save yourself. So I always think, like, I've thanked every single one of those people. And also, I just remember moments in my career when I saw, and like having that ability to look out ahead and see what's happening. You have to read the tea leaves sometimes. Really. I mean, and I'll never forget when one of my mentors left, one of my sponsors left. He said to me, I can't help you anymore. You need to find somebody else. So you have to have these honest conversation pieces, because you need a sponsor, you need mentors, but sponsors, those folks, those people in the rooms, those are the people who are gonna really matter to you. Because there's a lot of conversation about you out there. and you don't even know what it is. So you've got to be in tuned, and you've got to read the tea leaves based on the information you have. And I can tell you, I have, and you also have to help the people around you. I'm a big proponent, and there have been a lot of regime changes in my career, and it's really, and you're in, you're out, you're not, and you've got to make sure that the good people out there who are hardworking, who are talented, your competition, I don't even consider them competition, they're my colleagues. And it's really important to share information that would be helpful to them. Because karma can be a blessing or a bitch. And I'm telling you, it will catch up to you. So don't be that person. Do not ever be that person. Be the person that when you look back on your career, you know you made a difference even though you didn't feel as though you had the power to control the career of someone, but you had the power to inform them and give them advice that was helpful in moving them forward as well.
Absolutely. And let's go back to sponsorship, which also leans into the mentorship, because first, as a young student, as you know, most of them here are, you need that mentor. Let's talk about maybe first your mentors that really, moved you along in the career.
So,
and how do you get one?
So, it's so funny. So, mentors, wherever you are in school. I was at Howard University in Washington, D.C. It was like one of the meccas of journalism and media. And so there were people always coming into the building. And I'll never forget, one of the people who came into the building was a guy by the name of Mike Wilbon. Any sports fans out there? And I knew who his cousin was. And I remember walking down the hall, and I said, oh my gosh, I was like, yes, you're 25 and you're writing for the Washington Post. I was like, but clearly it's in the DNA. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, Carol Simpson is your cousin. And it was like the fact that I knew that sparked a conversation, because she was someone I had interned with when I was at ABC. And she was a great mentor. I had dinner with her like 2 months ago in Boston, and I ran into Mike in Washington at a friend's brunch. And so what they, just giving you the confidence to just feel confident. The fact that they were in my life gave me such confidence. And I asked them to be mentors. Like anybody I met, one of my great, great mentors was a guy by the name of George Curry, rest in peace. He was a national correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. A lot of my early career were filled with mentors from print. Him, a woman by the name of Gail Pollard Terry, who was the editorial writer for the Los Angeles Times when I was there. George connected me when I went to Kenya for a semester abroad with the Nairobi bureau chief for the New York Times, a woman by the name of Sheila Rule. Sheila Rule then went on to the London bureau for the New York Times. I connected with her there, and then came back to New York. She introduced me to all of these incredible people, helped me in the career space, but also gave me great advice on life. And just one person oftentimes leads you to another. In the world of broadcast news, I mentioned Carol Simpson. There was a reporter for ABC News, George Strait, who was a medical correspondent there, he took me to Spago. He came out and there was no shenanigans. He was like, I would go into his office and we would talk about different things. When I was an intern, and some years later, 3 or 4 years later, he came out to LA. He still had my number, and he said, I remember you talking about the Oscars, and how much you watch them. He said, hey, he's like, I'm out here. He said, I will take you to Spago, because Spago was where they would have the after party. The Vanity Fair parties, like the big thing there. In the 70s and 80s, it was Spago. And just sort of like sharing pieces of yourself with people. I told someone that Oscar story. That's how I got invited to the Oscars.
Oh, wow.
I got invited to the Oscars 2 years ago, that very infamous Oscars. I have the picture I never posted that is like the picture.
I think you need to post it now.
I don't know about that. But I did share it with the executive producer of the Oscars when I interviewed him. I was like, yes, so you know, I had the picture.
Yes.
But I hope that answers you. I gleaned and gathered people in my life throughout my career. And just, it was anybody I met, I would ask, can I get your information? I would stay. Some people you gel with, some people you don't. There are people who've come to me and who meet with me, or I have a cup of coffee with. They call me on the phone. I critique a tape. I'm so crazy busy, but I look around and I see that they are moving up the ladder. There are people who are send me little notes. Thank you so much for that little piece of advice you gave me that one time. You never know how one moment, one piece of advice can lead to the thing that catapults someone, or the thing that gets someone through something. And that was given to me. It's really important that I give it back. Look, there are more people now. There are people I have mentored who are now in positions of power that help me. That's pretty freaking incredible.
You know what that says? Relationships.
Oh, relationships matter. Absolutely.
So, diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Big topic now. It's been for a few years. What changes in terms of diversity do you want to see, especially as a woman and especially as a woman of color?
Changes? When, I remember working in Orange County, California, and being in a car with my partner, a photographer, who we would have these debates about making sure we included everyone who was in a given space when we do MOSs or that kind of thing. He said, you're so dogged about it. He's like, but people are people. I was like, yeah, but people often who look like this don't get on TV. I'm going to make sure they get on TV. And he's like, well, that's being discriminatory. And I was like, what's more discriminatory? Making sure that, they're erased. Are people intentionally doing that? I don't know. But it's important for me to make sure that the fabric of a community is seen. He says, well, only 2% of Orange County is African American. And I said, and 10% is Hispanic, and 6% is Asian at the time, and 50% are women, and another 20% are probably LGBTQ, if not more. I was like, where are you going with this? What about half of the people at said event are among those communities? Why communities? Why do we only see these people? And so it was like I was constantly in a battle. This was 35 years ago. I was very strident about inclusion back then. And it's what I want to see. What I would love to see is actually, I see a lot of it now. I see my ability to tell stories from all walks of life. I love telling stories. People assume that one thing is it's coming at you one way, and then it kind of flips the script. I love that so many of my colleagues are women and part of the BIPOC community. I love that, but my fear is, and there was the race in 2020 after the social justice movement to hire, to promote based on a trigger of what was happening in the moment. And I've already seen the pendulum shift in the other direction. I've seen it on so many different levels. And that's my fear, that it's not in vogue anymore. There would already have been a great deal of diversity and inclusion efforts, certainly within, my company, with your company.
As well, yes.
And I have to say, with the third network, NBC News, who they really had a very intense diversity and inclusion. The reason I know all this is because someone close to me tells me a lot of the information that they deal with, insider information. But I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that intention lost.
So why is it important to have women leaders in the business, and even so, people of color?
Because they're part of the fabric of a community. They're part of the fabric of our nation. 50% of the nation, tell me about a plural or a singular, is, are. 50% is? 50% is? Always messes me up. But 50% of the nation, if not more, 51% of this country are women.
Women
are. Women are. Thank you.
Yes.
Having a little moment. It's like the flight. So 50%. Why don't we see 50% throughout the workspace? Oh, because the gender roles in our society haven't really caught up, right? One. Why are women, by and large, paid anywhere from 60 cents to 85 cents to the dollar of what a man is paid? That really angers me. The gender pay gap, I've been fighting for that, fighting for it, not outside of my community, but that's something that's our bottom line. That's like my household, your household. That makes a difference in our ability to pay for childcare, our ability to send our children to the schools that we may or may not choose to send them to, what they can do, what we can do. So like those issues are really things that I believe in. So why shouldn't we be paid as much? There's some things I'm not going to say because Anna's here. But I work really hard. I do a lot. And a lot of the other people who are around me do a lot. And we're asked to do more, a lot more, because of the shrinkage in the industry. So I just think that, we just have to, if it's shrinking everywhere, we just have to make sure that there's some fairness there. And we live in a society where in about 5 to 8 to 10 years, we're really going to be in a plurality where there is no more majority of anybody. And we need to make sure that our job market is equitable and fair, that it is inclusive, because so many of the people, have to sustain the communities if you don't have people who are in the upward and downward mobility of the space of employment, then you're going to have not employment, but pay disparities, which we already know is a huge pay disparity gap in communities of color versus majority communities. You have the widening gap of differentials between white, black, Hispanic, white. You've just got to even the playing field. And you know what? A rising tide lifts all boats. I think about a story I covered. I did a story on Hedy Lamarr. Anybody know who Hedy Lamarr is? I know you do. Hedy Lamarr, I mean, she's kind of like the Katherine Johnson. You've heard of Hidden Figures. Katherine Johnson in NASA, the amazing human computers that help propel John Glenn into space. Hedy Lamarr was this like bombshell actress from like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, but she was brilliant. She just had a mind, a scientific mind, and she patented this invention, which at the time that she was kind of cultivating, like, oh, we have this right. My mother, I got to get my mother from Europe to America, but I'm really afraid to get my mother from Europe to America because the Nazi U-boats are torpedoing all of the ships coming across the Atlantic. So, and they're doing it with these torpedoes. We need to figure out how to discern when the torpedoes are coming after us. And she devised, she's okay, I'm gonna, wait, if we do this, I don't know all the scientific, but she devised a device that would utilize sonar that would help to detect or help to ensure that the torpedo could steer itself on a radio frequency, like the American torpedoes, right? The government took, the suggestion. She had a patent on it. And then she never heard anything again from them. In the process, they didn't do anything during World War II, but then in the Korean War and the Vietnam War, there's a big question mark because all of these technologies started coming out that were very similar to her patent. And what they had done was they had essentially taken her patent and as they eminent domained it, I'll call it that, and she never knew. And so here she was segueing out of acting and into a space because she was aging out. But imagine a mind who on her free time was utilizing her brilliance to create machines that would later inform the technology of GPS, satellite technology, those things that we utilize every day, those little, the iPhone. Like that was the beginning of those technologies that the government then, I think it was at the late 80s, early 90s, opened up to like industry to utilize because they held on to that patent for so long. But yeah, that's the kind of, so like think about all the minds that we don't resource because we don't include them in the market. And I always say, and they look like, Steve Jobs was an Arab American. I don't think a lot of people know that. Maybe they do. Katherine Johnson, African American. There are so many inventions that come out of the African American space nobody knows about, from the gas mask to the stoplight, the 3-signal stoplight, to all the way to the super soaker. You know that. Seriously. Think about I just think like if we just let everybody be and we included everyone into the pie of what is America, I just think we would be so much further ahead. The humanity alone of our ability to love and to really embrace each other would just help to encourage world peace. I know that's me. I'm the flower child of my youth. I can't help it. But I just love people, and I love what we have been able to build. And I just think we could build so much more if we did it, if we truly did it together. That's just me. It's just me.
So we have many students here, and I know talking about the job market.
I know I kind of steered off course. I'm sorry.
But just going back to some of the things that you said about diversity, what are the things that they can do to stand out? A lot of questions that I've gotten is, should I own my diversity or should I not? What is the advice that you have and guidance?
You better own yourself. You better be true to you. And there's nobody else like you. I remember being told, change your name. You don't look black. What are you? And I said, well, my mother, who I didn't have a relationship with, was Hispanic. And it's okay, use her maiden name. I was like, I'm not using someone's name I don't even have a relationship with. What are you talking about? The fact, I was up for a fellowship to East Asia, and this man told me in the interview, he said, well, you don't look very black. How do you propose to, you know, it was like the most, I just like, be whoever you are to yourself, right? Be true to yourself. So that's one. Two, I just think it's like the lesson that everyone told me when I was in college. It was like drilled into us, and it's like so unfortunate because it leads to the unfairness that I'm describing. Because I feel like I have to work twice or three times as hard to get half as far as a woman of color. It's just like my mantra. Nobody's gonna outwork me. And nobody's gonna have a better attitude than I'm gonna have. And I'm gonna make sure, it's like I double down on like all the good things, right? I see people in my career who don't help people. And they got farther ahead of me, farther ahead than I did. But where I am now, they're either right next to me or they're no longer in the field. I've seen people who don't do half the work I do, but I can't run their race. I got to run mine, and that's what works for me. I am trying to slow down. I'm really trying because I think I've earned it. I'm at a point in my career where I've earned, like, everything that I've done, I've earned, right? All the good things that have come to me, I've earned. And I'm trying to pace myself better. Hopefully, you are the generation that doesn't have to live that unevenness. But I don't think we're there yet.
You mentioned your mom. Your memoir. I think we're going to end on this. Before we take Q&A from people, I know you guys will have a lot of questions. Belonging. I interviewed you for your book. Just tell us what inspired you to do that, because you're a journalist, you're always on the go. How did you do that? Because I don't know how you had the time.
So what's crazy is, so one of my besties at work, if not my bestie, is a guy by the name of Anthony Mason. He is a legend at CBS News, a legend in broadcast news. Anthony, 15 years ago, we were in a conversation, and I mentioned to him that my situation, and he said, "Oh my goodness, you need to write a book." And I was like, write a book? I was like, there's so many people out there who have like much more like varied sob stories. He's like, not a sob story, it's a story of like inspiration, you know? And he said, I even have your first line for you. He said, I am my mother's secret. I was like, ooh, that's pretty good. I never did anything with that. So fast forward 2020, a lot of opportunities came out of 2020 for me, for a lot of people. George Floyd, I was just having a conversation with George Floyd's brother about this and what his niece had said in that moment. My father's death is going to change the world. And I think about that all the time, and how many people had to die tragically to change the world, but that's another story. But I was tasked by my senior producer, Bryant at CBS Mornings, to do a story that put in perspective this point of social justice protests, and I've covered them all. I mean, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles in '92, the uprising in Los Angeles. I lived right dead center of Reginald Denny was beaten, where I basically, you don't know these names, but one of the pivotal moments in the that 4-day moment of riots and burning and killing and was a man who was pulled out of his truck and beaten right there on the street. And he was a white man, and there were a bunch of angry black people who pulled him out of the truck. A lot of them gang members. I mean, I knew all these people, right? There were moments in that 4 days where I had a great deal of hope. I remember pulling up to in my neighborhood, and I saw these black children being chased by all these white cops. And I didn't have my camera, and I know I would have won the Pulitzer Prize if I had captured this moment, because when I got closer to them, it was children in the neighborhood playing a game of pickup basketball with these 4 white cops, and the black cop was the one sitting back watching it on the squad car. I just, like, that moment to me was like, that was hopeful. In plumes of smoke were still rising in the sky, but they were in the neighborhood, and they saw these kids, and they just wanted them to feel like they did belong. But, like, we're not here to make you feel in danger. So, like, Dana, Trayvon Martin, Emmanuel Nine, Michael Brown, you name it, I've covered them. And I know we're running out of time. But I was told, please put it in perspective. So I did. In about 15 seconds in the middle, I turned the lens on myself, and I said something to the effect of, racism has impacted me my entire life. Born into the unrest of the 1960s, I am the product of a union between a father who adored me and a mother who to this day does not acknowledge my existence. And finished the story. It was, like, what is happening? Now, that's kind of a no-no in what we do, but it was really important because I needed people to understand that the reason why I've chosen to cover social justice is because it's embedded in my DNA. The reason why I exist was that these two people, one, chose to have me even though everything else said to them no, right? And I'll never forget Gayle King. She said, whoa, 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 whoa. She's like, Michelle, wait a minute. Did I just hear you right? And the conversation turned from all of this coverage we'd done throughout those 2 hours to, like, this, like, very personal moment. And I was like, oh goodness, I really made a big mistake. This should not be about me, but it is now, right? And 37 minutes after that story aired, a publisher with a major publishing group called me. Her name is, why am I forgetting her name? Her name's Lisa, but I can't,
Sharkey?
Lisa Sharkey, thank you.
Also a former boss of mine.
Yeah, oh really?
Yes. Lisa
is the best. And she emailed me, she said, I'm a publisher, that was an incredible story, I'd like to tell it. And that usually doesn't happen. So when you say, what was my inspiration? I didn't think I wanted to write a book, but the fact that somebody told me I had a story worth telling, well, that's every journalist, like, it's like dare. And so I had an opportunity, and I was not gonna squander it. And so I said yes. And so I have a book now. And I have a book because another publisher at another company, and this is what I'm saying, people helping people no matter what their station, she put me in touch with a co-writer. And I would not have been able to write this book without my co-writer, Rosemarie Robotham. And it's just, it was, I was working and going, it was this incredible process. I'm sure it was cathartic. It was a growing experience. It was tremendously exhausting. But, I'm out on the other end of it, and the great thing is I have something to show for it because I'm a New York Times bestseller.
Yes. Michelle, so courageous for you to write this book. Everyone, she has given you so much information. We can start with the Q&A. Please be, short and sweet with your questions if you guys can line up. But Michelle Miller, get her book, It's Belonging, and then also watch her on CBS Saturday Morning.
Yes, CBS Saturday Morning. It's the best show on Saturday morning.
Okay. Let's start.
You're ready to go.
Yes. Okay.
Right there, so convenient. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing your journey. My name is Gina Moore Herring. I graduated from NYU last year, studied digital communications and media.
Oh, wow.
I worked in corporate America most of my life, but I'm really trying to focus on my writing career now and media. And I was just curious about what you use to determine what content you want to report on, because I think all writers feel like what they're writing about is so powerful. And, I've written some short stories. I've created some short films. And when you mentioned that you went to Howard, I thought about my daughter who just got in, and she just started this fall. But I chronicled her journey from when she was rejected last year to getting in this year. So I kept the camera running, even from her crying. And so it's a powerful short film. And I just thought, how do you decide what you want to report on?
It's what you're passionate about. It's what, so I have the incredible gift of, how do I say this, Anna? I have agency now to tell the stories that I want to tell. I do a lot of feature reporting. I always try and tie it back to, things that are happening, obviously, in the ether of what is happening in the moment.
Relevance.
What is relevance? Relevance is key. So I hear most of my best stories are word of mouth. Right. And I keep hearing, I'm like, what am I going to do in 3 weeks? I don't have another story beyond December. And then I'll have a conversation. I just had a conversation with someone about a story in Los Angeles, a woman that I was on this retreat with who told me this incredible story. I won't go into the whole deal, but it's a story of resilience. It's a story, a lot of my stories deal with, there's an historical aspect that is often about how unfair we can be to each other. And then there's redemption to show just the opposite of how we have great allyship. And this was like one of these stories. I love stories that flip the script on what we're taught. Right. What we're taught about who we are, what we're taught about who we can be, what we are taught. And it's really what's so, in fact, I'm giving a commencement in Florida next week. Yeah, next week. And Florida is going through a moment where history is being challenged. And there's so much that makes up this nation in terms of who contributed, who didn't. If we don't know that everybody who's here had a contribution to the nation and made it what it is today, then how do we respect all people? And everybody here has contributed. No matter what they look like, no matter what religion they are, no matter what gender they are, no matter what LGBTQ status they are, every single one of them in the sphere has made this country great. And it's still great. You don't need to do, well, you know where I'm going.
Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story. My name is Victoria Montori. I'm a senior at Sacred Heart University. Mm-hmm. And as an aspiring television host, what is your advice for where to start and then how to eventually build your way up to that position?
Where to start? Where do you want to start?
In television.
Right, you want to start in television. Okay, so you generally, although I always tell people, everybody has their own path, but generally you're not going to start like as an anchor, right? So
Yeah.
you want to be the best. The thing that has propelled me is being a good storyteller. And so being able to, tell people an interesting, what is happening around them in an interesting manner that's going to keep them in tune to the story, that's your job. And so that's what I would lean into. So I just personally think I think there are careers at the network that can get you there. I know one of my colleagues, she started with me, I was her first. A couple of them, I helped break them in. Paula Reed at CNN, Adriana Diaz at CBS now. Both of them started as MMAs, like at the network level, they called them digital journalists. And they were essentially producers with cameras. And the training and the skill set really helps you to learn how to grind out stories. I mean, they can do things even I can't do because they know the technology of today better than I do. But I don't know what someone asked a question earlier, I don't know what the future is gonna look like. So the more skills you have and the better you are at utilizing them quickly, and I think that's gonna arm you for the career you're looking for.
And Michelle gave you some ideas. Start at a local market, get all the skills that you can, and then move your way back up. I mean, not everyone has connections, right, at the network, but definitely, if you want to be on air, you should go to a local market.
That's probably the most easiest, most direct.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Hi, thank you so much for sharing everything. You are indeed a great storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Miranda. I'm a senior at NYU, and I really appreciated you saying that social justice is embedded into your DNA and everything you do. I'm trying to do that with my work in media as well. I was curious how you figure out where the line is, because you said you also have to fight for stories a lot, and I do find that happens a lot with stories that you want to tell that involve social justice. How do you know when to fight and not burn bridges and respect hierarchy, and how do you know kind of which stories to fight for and how to do it?
Yeah, well, it's all in tone. I'll never forget. So the same person who saved my job, right? I'll never forget. There was a story that I broke on the Catholic, and it was crazy because Howard University student actually broke it for print. Rachel Sworn is my former classmate. And she's writing a book about it now. I'm going to plug her book. And she broke the story, and I went at it from a different direction. And so I was like the first network to get the scoop with Georgetown and like its slave history. And I told the story, and initially, it only got traction with one platform, right? Nobody else was interested in it. And then the story blew up. And then the story had legs in terms of like something else, like having a policy shift in Georgetown, the way Georgetown did their business. And they gave the story to somebody else for another show. And I stomped in, same guy, so the guy, I was so angry. So I stomped in to his office and I was like, that is because I had a great relationship with him, but I totally, I didn't read that room because I stomped in and I said, in a huff. I was so, my emotions got to me. And he and I had this moment where we were at each other. But, it was great because, it eventually blew over. But I'll never forget, two things happened after the argument. If I had just waited 10 minutes, because the producer who was assigned the story came in and said, why did you assign this to so-and-so? Michelle Miller did all the legwork, and all the tapes have her all through them. And he was like, okay. So and then the next person, the guy over at the other show who was running the other show called and said, hey, why are you, because eventually they were going to take it for the next morning. He said, why isn't Michelle doing this story? She kind of owns it. He was like, it's like this moment, like, and if I hadn't confronted him in a huff, it was like emotions poured. Again, we continue to make mistakes, right? No matter how old you are. But if I had just taken a breath and just let those 10 minutes play out, he would have said, oh, and that's what Kim Godwin told me, president of ABC News. She came to my office, she's like, girl, what, she said, what did you do? And like, these are heart-to-heart conversations we have. And she said, if you had just waited, you would have had the story. Don't do that anymore. Take a breath. Right. So I would say, and breathing, guys, okay, I've been doing some breath work. Breathing is so important. Taking that breath, one of my favorite movies is Ever After, Cinderella story. Drew Barrymore, right? And there's a moment, the climax of the movie, where she gets up, she's going to the ball and she says, breathe, just breathe, right? Breathing really makes it, you take that breath in, you hold it for 5 seconds, you breathe out for 5 seconds, it brings all that adrenaline down, and it helps me with stage fright. It helps me in my interviews whenever I'm like a little antsy or anxious. Breathing, bar none, best thing ever. Did that answer your question?
Yes, so tone, having those advocates and sponsors, and breathing.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then also very good, what you said is keep fighting for your stories, but do it with grace.
Yes, grace, not tone. No matter how you think what kind of, great relationship you have, you don't want to ever, and he is like, again, like still like someone who I have a great deal of respect for. He's moved on, but yeah, still a great guy.
Hi, Michelle and Sabina. Thank you so
Hi.
much for talking to us. My name is Aria. I'm graduating from NYU Journalism this month. You mentioned, if you want to be on camera, then start out from a local market and work your way up. I was wondering, for early career journalists who don't necessarily prioritize being on camera, do you still recommend starting out at a local market, or do you think it's better to work your way up from networks?
Well, look, I say throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. So, I don't know if you've ever seen The Odd Couple. That's where that whole term came from. But it's really important for you to just throw out, because you don't know what jobs you're going to get. If the job in the local market, you're going to glean some experience from wherever you go. If it's not working out after 2 years, then go someplace else. But you go where the opportunity is. I always went where the opportunity is. I didn't say no to any opportunity that came to me unless I had a choice. But by and large, the path I chose was the opportunity was here. The opportunity was here. I didn't have like a plethora of opportunities. And maybe some, like my cousin, she graduated last year from the University of Miami, and she was great, because I put her in touch with some folks I knew at my network, and she got some opportunities elsewhere, and she had to pick and choose, and I could not believe she turned down the job she turned down at 60 Minutes.
Well, Aria, I have some information about Aria. She's getting an internship next year at Nightline. So what I would say is that's an amazing show to start your career, and stay there, work your way up. And I'm not saying that just because I'm with ABC, but that's an amazing show.
Yeah, I got my start at Nightline, ABC, with Ted Koppel back in '88. I was an intern, but it was a great experience. All those people I named who were early mentors of mine came through that internship.
Oh, wow. That's what everybody told me. That
Yeah.
is amazing. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap, so we can
Oh,
do
no.
like one more question.
I
and then
talked
maybe we
too
can talk.
much.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
talk on the side here for
Okay.
the rest of the people. So I can do last question.
Hi, Michelle. My name is Zahra Umairat. I'm a recent graduate from Hofstra University. I studied marketing and graphic design. I just wanted to start off by saying that I found everything you said very inspirational. I love that even though you're at a very high status in your career, you still advocate for racial equity, and I think that's so important, and it's very hopeful for the younger generation to see that although you've progressed so highly, you don't forget your values, and that helps us so much. So I just want to thank you for that. And my question is, I went to a PWI, and even now when I'm applying to a lot of corporations and businesses that often tend to be PWIs as well, I find myself feeling, I don't want to say undeserving, but not that I belong in certain settings. I am Arab American, and I'm a visibly identifiable Muslim, so sometimes when I'm in those settings, I don't feel that I belong. So my question is, when you were starting off, and even now in your career, when you feel that feeling, what do you do to fix it or to kind of reprogram your brain to feel like, yes, I deserve to be here? And yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, I double down.
Yeah.
I like double, that's like my innate personality. I double down and I make the space. One of the greatest gifts I was given to me by an Arab American Muslim identifying BA. Who took it upon herself to go through many tapes to find another time that I kind of put a little personal spin on a story. And it was a story about my father and the RFK assassination, Robert F. Kennedy assassination. And I always she wears a hijab, but she, like when we have conversations, I'm kind of like always asking her, I ask people very deliberate questions because I want to make sure they're okay. And she says, I double down. She says, yes, it's uncomfortable. She was oftentimes in the field where she was the only person of color in podunk places all across the country as an MMA. She says, I just double down. She was already a lovely, sweet person, but she had to find the inner strength to kind of combat all of the messaging around who she was. And oftentimes, when she felt she was in danger, she asked for help. She called the desk and she says, I'm not safe here. That may not be like your experience in the workplace, but really, we always find our community. And I always say, it's a kind of quote. It's an old, like my grandmother used to say. She said, not all skin folk are kin folk. Not everybody who looks like you is for you, and not everybody who doesn't is against you. And I just think that you always have to be clear that yes, there is this thing called racism, sexism. There are these things called Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. There's a lot of that out there. But don't project it on everybody or everyone, because people are gonna love you and appreciate you and see you for who you are in every space, in every environment. And you just have to be open to it. So double down. I am here, I am in. And sometimes just saying it out loud. Everything that has come to me that I have said out loud happens. The book, I said I was going to do it. Wanting to be a network news correspondent, I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. Well, I've reported overseas for the network, so that counts, right?
Yes.
But everything that I said out loud has happened. Even after rejection, even after mistakes, even after, and so just like so sometimes just say that. Say it. Say it out loud. You believe in Allah? Inshallah, you make it happen, right? Yeah, you go there. And I encourage everyone. I did a piece recently, and this is so important because I don't want our men to misunderstand. It was so funny. I saw a Joan Rivers tape today. Was it Joan Rivers? Yeah, it was someone who basically said, I don't want anybody to think I'm anti-male, that I'm anti-white male, that I'm I am not that person. I did a story on a woman who was she was a feminist through and through. She just came out with a book called What About Men? Because like in the space we're in, we're talking so much about like what's wrong and how the patriarchy has helped build like a society that really keeps a lot of people down, that a lot of people who would naturally be a part of the entitlement patriarchy, hierarchy, they feel isolated too. They feel like they don't belong. And so this woman who's a feminist found herself writing about, you know, men, white men, and helping them find spaces so that they don't turn into these ultra more like to perpetuate the sexism that exists because they're saying society is unfair for them. So I guess that all of that to say that you will find it. I guarantee you will find it. People look like you, who don't look like you, who don't believe in the things that you do. It's just, you just double down in knowing who you are and be open to the good, and sometimes some bad will seep in, but that's life, and just receive it and know who you are.
Such
Thank you so
amazing
much. That was a great
information.
response.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Michelle Miller.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, you guys have gotten so many.
I looked at Anna. I do okay. I didn't step on
Yes, you've
myself.
gotten
I didn't
so
step on
many amazing
myself.
gems from Michelle. So much information. I hope you guys took notes. But thank you for coming.
Thank you.
This is
and
amazing.
thank you for always being up for talking to me. You are so sweet to me.
I always
And see, we're in different networks.
Yes, always. All this information she said, the business is very small, relationships. Remember that. Everything that you're learning, remember that it takes you to the next steps of your career. Remember, this business is very, very small. One day I may be working for her.
Yeah.
One day I may be working for her.
So,
One day I may need a job. I might be
Yes.
coming in.
but everyone, Michelle Miller.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. Really appreciate it. So inspiring. I just learned so much from all of you every single day.